there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my November wrap-up. In the month of November, I managed to read 6 books, which is really good for me, and I'm super pleased with everything I got through. I finished up some series, I started some new series, I had some disappointing reads, but before we go ahead and get on into the books, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box below for links to all of my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon. So unfortunately, the month of November was a fairly mediocre month for me. I feel like most of my reads were actually disappointing and I didn't have any new favorites. The way that I structure my wrap-ups is I start with my lowest rated book and go up to my highest rated book, and I will put timestamps down below to each individual book. The first book is Nano by Robin Cook. This is a medical thriller that was published in 2013, and it is technically the second book in a series, but it's one of those series where each individual book addresses a different plot. It just kind of carries over the different characters. This follows a girl named Pia, and Pia went to school to be a doctor but isn't a practicing doctor, and she gets involved with this nanotechnology company helping to develop these nanobots that can help cure infection, but then she starts to uncover that this nanotechnology company might be, doing things that are unethical and putting people's lives at risk for, monetary gain. And I was really excited to read a book by Robin Cook because medical thrillers are something that I wanted to dip my toes into. And unfortunately, this one just missed the mark for me. In my personal opinion, Robin Cook is not a very good fiction writer, at least as is demonstrated in this book. He does way too much direct characterization, telling the reader, not allowing the reader to make their own inferences. He writes characters just in a way that is not even believable. His characters are not well written at all. And I will go into more detail about this in my actual review. There was an open-ended ending to this book, meaning that we didn't know the fate of some of the characters, and I don't know if that was supposed to carry over into another book in the series. I was under the impression this was a standalone, so I don't know. This book didn't have an ending. The characters were horribly written. Every single guy was in love with the main character. It was just totally unrealistic. And the little bit of nanotechnology that we got in here was just not enough to satisfy what I was looking for in this book. I wanted to learn about nanotechnology, and this just did not do that. So I ended up giving Nano 1 out of 5 stars. Then we have Fur the Wolf by Hannah Witten. This is book 1 in a new adult fantasy series. I think it's called the Wilderwood series, and it's supposed to be a Red Riding Hood retelling. And in this book, we follow a character named Red, or Redaris, and she is the second daughter, she has a twin, of this queendom that borders this sort of magical wood. And in this wood supposedly lives this mythical wolf, and every second daughter is sacrificed to the wolf. And the reason that these girls are sacrificed is in the hopes that the wolf will be satisfied with the second daughter and will release this kingdom's or this world's gods from captivity within this evil magical wood. So we're following this character Red as she is being sacrificed. She goes into the wilder wood, but then she uncovers the truth about the wood, about the wolf, about what's actually happening there, and about the story she's been told about her world's, mythical gods and whether it's accurate or not. And we come to find out that a lot of these stories are completely inaccurate. So this book, to me, really doesn't have at all anything from the traditional Red Riding Hood story. And in fact, I think it is actually more of a Beauty and the Beast retelling because we have, this girl that gets sent to this wood, and it turns out that the wolf is a man, and he lives in this secluded castle in the middle of this wood, and he takes Red, for his wife. And, they start to kind of fight against the forces of evil that are happening in this world and trying to get the truth out there. And I think that's more Beauty and the Beast personally, but this book I just couldn't get on board with. I really did not like the main character, Red. I did not feel any type of connection between her and the main character. There was a romance between her and the wolf, as we all could probably guess based on the synopsis, and I just could not get on board with the romance. I just didn't feel any energy or connection between the two. I did like the setting. I really thought the author did an awesome job of building like this evil dark forest. And there just wasn't anything in this book that really gripped me. There wasn't anything that made me think critically or question, or any deep themes that really kind of spurred me to find this book interesting. It was a good, entertaining story, but to me, it completely lacked any type of depth, any type of intellectual stimulation, because even fantasy books, even fairy tales, even children's books can address deep-seated themes and make you think. And I just was not able to find anything in this book that did that for me, which is why I just felt disengaged from it. So it's probably an issue of me, the reader, not so much the book. It was fun, it was a good story, just nothing about it wanted me to continue on with the series, and I ended up giving this book 2.5 out of 5 stars, so right down the middle. I liked it, I didn't love it, it was okay, I won't be continuing. Then we have A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer. This is book 3 in the Cursebreaker series, which is a YA fantasy story that is loosely based off of Beauty and the Beast, or at least the first book is. The rest of the series definitely isn't. And I really enjoyed the first 2 books in this series. It follows a girl named Harper who lives in Washington, D.C. in our current world. And then there is this other realm kingdom called Emberfall. And there's a prince there that was cursed by an enchantress, and he transforms into a dragon. And every season, almost like his best friend, his servant, his guard named Gray, tries to find a girl to help break the curse. And in this case, he comes to our world and kidnaps Harper and brings her back to Emberfall. And then the story kind of goes from there. If I were just going to address the 3rd book in this series, I will say that this is definitely the most disappointing Bridget Kemmerer book that I have ever read. And the reason is that I felt like it was unfinished. There was an ending, but it left a lot to be questioned. It left a lot of loose ends not tied up. A lot of the ending had to be inferred. In fact, our main character, Harper, really wasn't even in the ending. And I feel like it's one of those cases where Bridget Kemmerer probably was not done writing this book, and it was drawing close to the deadline that the publisher gave her. I don't know, but that's how it felt to me, like she just rushed the ending. And I've read a couple YA series that seem to fall into that trap, and it's really aggravating for me because I invest so much time and energy and love for these stories and these characters only to get gypped at the end. I do like the series as a whole. I really like the characters. I thought Bridget Kemmerer did a great job of, putting these characters in situations where they had to question whether what they were doing was right or not, based on how it would affect other people, trying to see from other people's perspectives. I thought she did an excellent job with that, but just this book and this ending, just for me, did not hold a candle to the other 2 in the series. I ended up giving A Vow So Bold and Deadly 3 out of 5 stars. Then we have The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This is an adult thriller, and I think this is his most recently published book. I do have a full review for this, so I will link it up in the cards if you guys are interested in checking it out. This is the fourth Riley Sager book that I have read, and overall I really enjoy his works. This story follows a girl named Casey, and she was an actress, and her husband died by drowning in the lake that her family's home is on in Vermont. It's kind of this secluded part of Vermont that a lot of wealthy people, build houses, seasonal houses, and go there in the summer to stay. But Casey is grieving from the death of her husband, so she's, there at this house semi-permanently, and she has turned to alcohol to help deal with what she's going through. And she befriends this supermodel who bought the house across the lake. She and her husband did. And she sees her drowning in the lake one day and saves her, and the 2 women kind of get to know each other, but their relationship is fairly brief because Catherine, the model's name, goes missing, and Casey is absolutely convinced that her husband had something to do with it. So she spies on them every single day using binoculars, sitting on her porch watching them, and thinks she sees things going on that aren't necessarily accurate, so are kind of following an unreliable narrator. And this was definitely my least favorite Riley Sager book that I've read so far, and that is because I found the beginning a bit boring. I didn't really feel connected to Casey as a character. I didn't really believe that she was like this famous actress. And there was a paranormal element to this book that I really did not enjoy because I wasn't expecting a paranormal element in my thrillers, especially Riley Sager, because there hasn't been one before. I would say Home Before Dark is the only other book where he introduces a possible paranormal element, but then he goes on to explain, the real story behind it. And I was hoping that The House Across the Lake would have the same thing, that he would have a logical, realistic explanation for what Casey thought was paranormal, because I would have found that way more enjoyable and interesting, but he didn't. And I just could not get on board with that paranormal element. But there were a lot of good twists and turns in this book, one that had to do with Casey and her husband and their relationship and marriage that I did not see coming. There is a side plot about these three girls that had gone missing and presumed dead, and possible serial killer in the area that kind of ties into all the different stories. And I thought that that was very well done. So there were parts of this book I liked and parts that I didn't, which is why I ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars. Next, we have A Wilderness of Stars by Shay Earnshaw. This is a YA standalone. I'm going to say semi-sci-fi because the sci-fi elements in this are extremely light and they do not appear until the end of the book. By the way, I do have a full review for this book with and without spoilers. I will put that up in the cards if you're interested in checking it out. But in this book, we're following a girl named Vega, and Vega was born into a world that is sick and dying by this disease that they call consumption. It appears to be very similar to Earth, but we soon learn that these characters are not on Earth. Vega is known as the last astronomer, so she was taught to read and chart the stars, and that information has been passed down through this lineage of women. And Vega was told that when she sees these 2 twin stars in the sky, that is an omen that she needs to start out on her trek to save mankind, and she needs to find a person known as the architect who will have all of the information she needs to get to the sea. And when she gets to the sea, there will be a ship waiting for her that will help her save mankind. So that is the premise. Vega goes on this journey to save mankind. And I will say that Shay Earnshaw did an excellent job at setting up a really good mystery in this book, and that is the only thing that kept me reading. I wanted to know the end. I wanted to know exactly all the details of the truth, what was exactly going on, what this sickness was, what the history of these people and this planet was, and why is it that Vega is able to save them? What's going on with that? I will say that the journey part of this book where Vega started, and then as she was trying to get to the sea, did have some very slow and boring parts. There was also an antagonist that I really did not like named Hoyt, and I don't personally feel like he added anything to the story, and I really don't think he was even necessary to the story because his motivations didn't make sense for me. He was trying to kidnap Vega to force her to cure the people left on the planet when that's exactly what Vega was already trying to do. So I really didn't understand his motivations, and he just wasn't interesting villain at all. So this book did have its ups and downs. Overall, it was a good time. I enjoyed reading it. I'm glad I read it. I just had some problems with it, and I ended up giving A Wilderness of Stars 3 out of 5 stars. Lastly, we have Upgrade by Blake Crouch. This is a standalone adult sci-fi, and I actually read this with my husband, and we did like a spoilery discussion for this book. So if you guys have read it, or if you haven't read it and don't mind being spoiled, then I will link that discussion up in the cards for y'all. But in this book, we are following a character named Logan Ramsey, and it takes place in the near future. And in this world at this time, gene editing and altering is a possibility and a thing. And it got to a point where it had to be outlawed because people were doing things that were unethical and dangerous. So Logan's mom was actually one of the scientists that pioneered this type of, genetic altering. And Logan now works for the Gene Protection Agency, where he finds people that are doing these illegal activities and arrests them. But Logan one day becomes the victim of a genetic upgrade that he did not intend to happen or want to happen. And it follows his journey as he is trying to come to terms with the genetic upgrade, what it's doing to his body, and researching who the heck would want to do this. And it ends up opening the door to this kind of global issue of these people that want to force genetic upgrades on the human race in order to spur us to evolve, in a different manner so that we don't self-destruct. And there is a lot of philosophical questions that are addressed in here. There's a lot of ethical questions that are addressed in here. And I enjoyed this book, number one, because it was quick, it was fast-paced, and included a lot of cool science, a good story, all in a short amount of pages, which is always, kind of hard to find with sci-fi. It really made me think about the ethics of, gene editing and kind of the result of messing with Mother Nature. It made me think just about the nature of humanity in general. So I really enjoyed this book. I wish it had been a bit longer and some things had been expanded on. It was a bit predictable at moments. The ending was kind of how you would predict an ending of such story to be. And I ended up giving Upgrade a 4 out of 5 stars. All right, you guys, that is it for my November wrap up. Let me know in the comments what books you read in November, and I will see y'all in another video soon. Goodbye.